Let me tell you something today, and I want you to hear me good. You're stressing over things that God is already handling. I need you to understand. It's not about you figuring it out. It's about you trusting that the Creator has already gone ahead and worked it out. I know you've been pacing the floor wondering when things will change, but I've got a word for you. God has already set it in motion. So stop overthinking and start trusting His timing. God's timing is perfect, and you need to understand that you don't have to rush or force anything. I know you've been waiting for something to happen. You've been praying, hoping, maybe even losing sleep over it, wondering when it's going to change, when your breakthrough will come. I'm here to tell you today, right now, that God's timing is never late. It's not early, and it's not delayed. It's perfect. The waiting process is not because God is unsure. It's because He's preparing you for something bigger, something greater, something that your heart, mind, and spirit need in order to handle the blessing that is on its way. There's something so significant about this idea of waiting. Our world moves fast. Everything is instant. Everything is right now. We want things to happen quickly, quicker than quick. And when it doesn't, we start to question whether God has forgotten about us. But the truth is, while we may feel like time is running out, God is never in a rush. His plan is not a hurried, frantic rush. It's a deliberate, intentional, methodical design. He is not bound by time the way we are. He sees the beginning from the end. He knows the full picture when we can only see part of it. And in that waiting period, He is doing something. He's preparing your heart, your mind, your spirit. The situation you're in right now might be uncomfortable, but it's shaping you. The things you're struggling with, the things you feel are holding you back, the things that seem like setbacks, those are not obstacles. Those are opportunities for growth. God is using them to build a foundation beneath you so that when your blessing does come, you'll be able to handle it, and it won't be too much for you to bear. I know you've been praying, asking God, when is it going to happen? When is this change going to come? And each time it feels like the answer doesn't come fast enough, or maybe even not at all. But what I want you to realize is that the silence doesn't mean God is absent. The quiet doesn't mean God is ignoring you. The stillness is often where He's working the most. It's in those moments of waiting that He's refining you, preparing you for what's ahead. And that is His perfect timing in action. You see, when we rush things, we often miss the lessons, the small details, the subtle shifts that God is making in our lives. We get so caught up in the idea of moving forward that we forget to appreciate what we're learning while we wait. God knows that you need to be exactly where you are right now in order to receive what He has for you later. And if He were to give it to you too soon, you might not be ready for it, or worse, you might miss out on the real blessing because you didn't go through the process that prepared you. Understand that God doesn't work on our timetable. He's not bound by what we think is appropriate timing. His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. So when you're sitting there overthinking, stressing, worrying, trying to figure out how everything will work out, remember that God is already at work, and His plan is unfolding exactly as it should. The wait is not punishment, it's preparation. It's not about delay, it's about timing. And when the time is right, everything will fall into place. This moment, this season, this waiting period, these are the moments where your faith grows, where you're being shaped into the person who will one day receive the fullness of the promise. Trust that the delay is not a denial, it's not a setback. It's simply God's way of making sure you're ready to walk into the blessing He's prepared for you. So when the time comes, and it will come, it will be so much more than you could have imagined. But you have to trust that His timing is perfect, even when you don't understand it, even when you can't see it, even when it feels like you're running out of time. He's got it all under control. Letting go of control is one of the most powerful yet challenging things you'll ever do. We live in a world that teaches us to be in charge, to handle everything on our own, to have a plan for every step, and to take action every single moment. But the reality is there are things in life that are simply out of your hands. There are situations, circumstances, and even people that you cannot control. And if you're constantly holding on to the belief that it's all on you, you will never experience the freedom and peace that come from surrendering control to the one who knows exactly what's best for you. When you realize that you're not the one who's supposed to handle everything, something amazing begins to happen. You start to release the weight that you've been carrying. You stop trying to figure out every outcome, every decision, every tiny detail. You stop stressing over what you cannot change, and you start trusting the one who can. This is not a passive state of giving up. No, it's an active decision to trust in God's will, to step back and to let Him handle the things that are far beyond your ability. You've been carrying the weight of your worries, and you've been overthinking every situation. What will happen next? What if it doesn't work out the way I planned? What if I fail? These thoughts continue to spiral and consume your mind, but I'm telling you, that's not the way to move forward. God is not asking you to figure it all out. He's not expecting you to hold the entire world on your shoulders. He simply wants you to trust that He's got it all under control. He wants you to take your hands off it and allow Him to guide you through it. When you stop trying to control everything, you allow space for God to do what He does best, work miracles. It's hard because we feel like we need to be in charge, like we need to have all the answers. We feel like if we let go, things might fall apart. But the truth is, holding on to the need for control is often what keeps us from experiencing the fullness of what God has for us. Our minds get consumed by worry, and instead of seeing the path God has laid out, we focus on the obstacles in front of us. But when you release control, you open your heart to peace, and in that peace, you will see the path clearly. You see, when you try to hold on to everything, you create a barrier between yourself and the very things you're praying for. God's blessings can't flow freely into your life when you're so tightly gripping every situation, trying to force things to happen according to your own plan. When you let go, when you allow God to take over, you make room for His plan to unfold naturally without resistance. This isn't about sitting back and doing nothing. It's about actively choosing to trust that what God has planned for you is greater than anything you could orchestrate on your own. There's a profound peace that comes when you surrender control. It's a peace that only God can give, a peace that surpasses understanding. It's the peace of knowing that the God who created the heavens and the earth is the same God who is working everything out for your good. And once you let go of your desire to control everything, you start to experience that peace, and it frees you to focus on what truly matter. This doesn't mean that you stop working or that you stop making decisions. It doesn't mean you stop taking responsibility for the things that are in your control, but it does mean that you stop carrying the burden of everything. You stop worrying about what's going to happen next because you know that God is already handling it. You stop stressing over every little thing because you realize that God is already in the midst of your situation, already working things out for you. The key to this is trust. You have to trust that God knows what He's doing. It's not always easy, and there will be times when it feels like everything is falling apart, but I'm telling you, when you trust God with the things you cannot control, you will see Him move in ways you never imagined. His ways are not your ways. His thoughts are not your thoughts. He's working behind the scenes, putting things in place that you cannot even see. And when the time is right, He will reveal it all to you, and it will all make sense. You don't need to carry the weight anymore. You don't need to figure it all out. You don't need to be in control of every outcome. God has already taken care of the things that you cannot. So stop overthinking, stop stressing, and stop trying to do everything on your own. Let God be God. Trust Him with your future. Trust Him with your heart. Trust Him with your plans. When you do, you'll experience a peace and a joy that you can't find anywhere else because you know that everything is already in His hands. When you choose to trust God, you are making the most powerful decision you can make in your life. Trust is not simply believing that something might happen or hoping that things will turn out okay. It is a deep, unwavering confidence that no matter what happens, God is in control and he will take care of it. It's the kind of trust that rises above your circumstances, that stands firm even when the winds of life are howling and the storms seem unrelenting. Trusting in God means laying down your fears, your anxieties, and your doubts, and placing your full confidence in the one who holds all things together. Now, I know trust can be hard, especially when life doesn't seem to be going the way you expected. You've prayed, you've asked, you've hoped for a breakthrough, yet everything seems to be falling apart. When you look around, all you see are obstacles, challenges, and answered questions. It's in moments like these that trust is tested. It's easy to trust when everything is going smoothly, when the path ahead is clear, and when the sun is shining. But real trust is forged in the midst of trial and tribulation, when everything around you seems uncertain, when the future is unknown and the answer is nowhere in sight. Trusting God doesn't mean that you won't experience pain, difficulty, or disappointment. It doesn't mean that everything will always be easy or that your problems will disappear overnight. What it means is that even in the middle of your struggles, you know that God is right there with you, working everything together for your good. When you trust God, you believe that his plan is greater than your own understanding. You may not see the solution right now, but you trust that God sees the bigger picture, and his plan is always better than anything you could imagine. Trust is not just about believing that God will deliver you from your problems. It's about believing that he will walk with you through them. He is with you in your uncertainty, your fear, your frustration. You don't have to face it alone, and you don't have to figure it all out by yourself. When you trust God, you release the burden of trying to control every outcome, and you allow him to lead you through it. You stop focusing on what you don't have and start trusting that what you do have, his presence, his love, his grace, is more than enough. Trusting in God also means letting go of the need to know everything. We are conditioned to think that we need to have all the answers, that we need to understand every detail, that we must be able to plan and prepare for every possible outcome. But the truth is, you don't need to know everything. In fact, the more you try to figure it all out, the more you can drive yourself crazy. Trusting God means that you accept that some things are beyond your comprehension. There are mysteries, there are reasons, there are plans that you may never fully understand, but you trust that God knows exactly what he's doing. Sometimes trusting God means letting go of your own timeline. We want things to happen when we want them to, and when they don't, we begin to lose hope. But God's timing is never wrong. What may seem delayed to you is simply part of God's perfect plan. His timing is always exactly what you need, even when it feels like the wait is unbearable. While you're waiting, God is working on your heart, your character, your strength. The wait is not punishment, it's preparation. God is preparing you for what's coming next, and when the time is right, he will bring about everything he has promised. I know it's hard when you've been waiting for a long time and the answer still hasn't come. It's hard when you've been praying for something and it feels like the heavens are silent. But this is where trust becomes crucial. Trust means that even when you can't see the way forward, you still believe that God is working behind the scenes. Even when you don't have all the answers, you trust that God has a plan. You may not know how, when, or why, but you trust that his plan is perfect and it will unfold exactly when it's meant to. Trust also means surrendering your will to God's will. We all have dreams, desires, and plans for our lives. We want things to go according to our own blueprint. But true trust is acknowledging that God's plan for you is far greater than any plan you could ever come up with. Surrendering your will is not about giving up on your dreams, but about trusting that God knows what's best for you, even when it looks different than what you expected. When you trust God, you are saying, Lord, I know you have my best interest at heart, and I am willing to follow wherever you lead. One of the most freeing things about trust is that it allows you to live in peace. When you trust God, you are no longer burdened by the weight of worrying about every little thing. stop overthinking and start living. Trust gives you the freedom to rest, to relax, and to enjoy life even in the midst of uncertainty. It's the peace of knowing that everything is in God's hands and He's got it under control. You don't have to worry about what tomorrow will bring because you know that God is already there, preparing the way for you. This kind of trust doesn't happen overnight. It takes time and it takes experience. You learn to trust God by looking back at all the times He has been faithful in your life, by remembering how He has brought you through the hard times, by reflecting on the many ways He has provided for you and shown you His love. The more you see God's faithfulness in your past, the easier it becomes to trust Him with your future. So stop overthinking, stop worrying, stop trying to control the outcome. Trust that God is working in your life, even when you can't see it. He's handling it. He's already got it all figured out. And when you trust Him completely, you will find peace in the midst of the storm, joy in the midst of waiting, and confidence in the midst of uncertainty. Because you know that the one who holds the universe in His hands is also holding your life in His care, and He will never fail you. When you release control over your life, it opens the door to freedom, freedom that you may not have even realized you were missing. The truth is, we were never meant to carry the weight of everything on our own shoulders. Life, with all its challenges, its worries, and its responsibilities, can quickly become overwhelming when we try to handle it all ourselves. But the beauty of letting go is that it allows us to make room for something far more powerful and capable than our own strength. It is about stepping back, surrendering our need to control every detail and allowing God to take over. In doing so, we free ourselves from the constant anxiety and stress that come with trying to manage every situation, every outcome, and every moment. For so long, you've believed that if you didn't take charge, things would fall apart. You've believed that if you didn't control everything, everything would crumble. But I want you to understand this. The very fact that you're holding on so tightly to everything is often what's causing the struggle in the first place. When you try to manage every aspect of your life, you begin to live under the pressure of perfection. You get caught up in the illusion that you have to be in control to make things work. And this illusion only leads to exhaustion. It drains your spirit and consumes your thoughts. The more you try to control, the less peace you feel. In reality, the moment you stop trying to figure it all out, you begin to release that pressure. It's like finally taking off a heavy burden that you've been carrying for far too long. When you allow God to take control, you stop fighting against the flow of life. You stop resisting, and instead you begin to trust that He knows what's best for you. You may not understand it in the moment, but when you step back and let go of that control, you give space for God's power and purpose to be revealed in ways that you could never have imagined. Letting go doesn't mean that you stop caring or that you become passive. It's not about giving up. It's about recognizing that there are things in life that you cannot change, things that are beyond your ability to control, and acknowledging that you don't need to hold on to them. When you surrender these things to God, you're not abandoning them. You're placing them in the hands of the one who can truly handle them. You're saying, God, I trust you to do what I cannot. I trust that you know exactly what needs to be done, and I will follow your lead. There is an incredible peace that comes when you stop fighting to control the outcome. The more you hold on to control, the more you complicate your life. The more you try to force things, the more you create tension and frustration. But when you let go, the tension eases, the anxiety fades, the fear is replaced with peace. You may not know what the future holds, but you trust that God, who holds the future in His hands, will take care of you every step of the way. And with that trust, peace floods your heart and mind. One of the hardest things to do is to let go of the need for certainty. We all want to know what's coming next. We want the map, the plan, the timeline. We want to be prepared for every possible outcome. And when we don't have the answers, we panic, we worry, we overthink. But this is where trust becomes vital. Letting go of control doesn't mean you have all the answers, and it doesn't mean that you know what will happen next. It simply means that you trust the one who knows all the answers, who holds all the details, and who is in complete control of your future. You don't need to know what tomorrow brings because you know the one who holds tomorrow. When you stop trying to control everything, you also stop carrying the burden of perfection. Life is not perfect, and neither are you. We are all human and we all make mistakes, but perfection isn't what God is after. What He desires is your heart, your willingness to trust Him, and your willingness to follow His lead. When you stop trying to be perfect and instead choose to trust that God will work through your imperfections, you free yourself from the pressure to perform. You can step into each day with the confidence that God is with you, guiding you, and that He will use everything in your life, good and bad, for His purpose. Letting go of control is not an easy task, especially when you've spent so much of your life trying to manage every aspect of your world. But every time you release the need to control, you make room for God to show you something new. You open the door to the incredible possibilities He has for your life. His plan may not look like your plan, but His plan is always better. When you let go, you invite His wisdom, His timing, and His perspective into your life, and that will lead you down a path of peace, purpose, and fulfillment. It's also important to realize that when you let go of control, you are also letting go of the guilt and shame that offer company the feeling of inadequacy. You see, when you try to control everything, you're essentially telling yourself that you're not good enough unless you make everything happen. You carry the weight of believing that if things don't go the way you've planned, you failed. But that's a lie. Letting go means accepting that your worth is not tied to your ability to control everything. You are worthy because God created you, and He loves you, and He is working everything out for your good, even when you can't see it. When you release control, you embrace the truth that God is the one who holds all things together. He is the one who is in charge, and His plans are far beyond anything you can conceive. You begin to realize that the best way forward is not through your own efforts, but through surrendering your life to God's will. And as you do, you will begin to experience a life of peace, freedom, and joy that comes from knowing that you are walking in alignment with His purpose for your life. Letting go is a daily choice. It's a conscious decision to trust God every day, in every moment, with every situation. The more you practice surrender, the more you will experience His presence, His guidance, and His peace. And as you continue to let go, you'll find that you are no longer weighed down by the pressure of control. Instead, you'll be walking freely, trusting God to lead you every step of the way, knowing that He is handling it all, because He always has been. There's a profound truth that when we stop overthinking and trying to manage every single detail of our lives, we actually begin to walk into the freedom God has always intended for us. For so long, we've been taught that if we don't take charge, if we don't act immediately, if we don't fix every situation, things will fall apart. The weight of that belief alone can be overwhelming, because it places all the responsibility on our shoulders. But the truth is, we were never meant to carry that weight. God did not create us to be all-powerful or to know everything. He created us to trust Him and to walk by faith, not by sight. We spend so much time trying to figure things out, planning and plotting every move, believing that if we can just control the outcome, we can secure our future. But what we fail to realize is that our limited perspective and understanding of life is so much smaller than what God sees. God is not bound by time or by the limitations that we are. He sees the beginning from the end. He knows what lies ahead, and He is already working in the spaces we can't even imagine yet. This means that when we try to control everything, we're essentially telling God that we don't trust His timing, His plan, or His way. We're relying on our own understanding, which, let's face it, is far more limited than His divine wisdom. When we choose to let go and stop overthinking every situation, we're opening up space for God to work in our lives in ways that go beyond what we could ever plan. I know it's difficult because we live in a world that tells us to take control, to act fast, and to never show weakness. But the most powerful thing you can do is to release the pressure of trying to figure it all out. When you stop trying to be in control, you make room for peace. Because peace only comes when we trust that God is handling it. There's something incredibly freeing about knowing that you don't have to know every answer. You don't have to have every step mapped out. You don't have to know how everything will turn out, because God already knows. And the peace that comes with that understanding is a peace that surpasses all understanding. It's the kind of peace that lets you sleep at night without tossing and turning, because you know that the situation is no longer your burden to bear, it's His. And when you place your trust in Him, you allow Him to take the reins and lead you where you need to go. You see, life is filled with uncertainty. There's no way to know exactly how things will turn out, but that's not a reason to panic or stress. The uncertainty doesn't have to lead to fear, it can lead to faith. When you choose to trust God with the unknowns, you shift your focus away from the worry and the what-ifs, and you focus on the one who holds the future. Instead of spending your energy trying to figure out how to make everything work, you spend it on trusting that God will make a way where there seems to be no way. This is not just a passive waiting, it's an active trust, a daily decision to let go and to leave the outcome in His hands. Overthinking often leads to second guessing and doubt. You begin to wonder if you're making the right decision, if you've missed something, if you should have acted sooner or done something differently. But these thoughts only add to the confusion. When you're constantly doubting yourself in the process, it's hard to see the truth of God's plan. And when you're clouded by doubt, you lose sight of the peace that comes with trusting. And when you stop overthinking, you give yourself permission to trust that God's timing is perfect, even if it doesn't match up with your own timeline. You allow Him to unfold your story in ways that are beyond your imagination, knowing that His timing is not our timing, but it is always the right timing. God doesn't want us to live in a constant state of anxiety, overthinking every decision. He wants us to live with peace, knowing that He is guiding us. But in order to experience that peace, we have to let go of the need to control everything. We have to surrender our plans to Him and trust that He will guide us in the right direction. This doesn't mean we don't take action or make decisions. It means that when we do take action, we do so with the confidence that God is directing our steps, that we are not alone in the process, and that He is handling the outcome. When you stop overthinking, you stop holding yourself to impossible standards. You stop thinking that you have to be perfect or that you have to have everything figured out. This kind of thinking only leads to frustration and burnout. Instead, by letting go of your need for perfection, you open yourself up to the grace and mercy that God freely offers. You allow yourself the grace to make mistakes, to learn and to grow. And when you fall, you trust that God will pick you up and continue to lead you forward. There's no need to have it all figured out. The pressure you've been carrying is not yours to bear. It's God's, and He is more than capable of handling it. The more you let go and trust God, the more you begin to see His hand at work in your life. You begin to notice the ways He has already provided for you, the doors He's already opened, and the plans He's already set in motion. It becomes easier to trust Him because you begin to see how faithful He's been in the past. And when you trust God, you're not just trusting Him with the big things, but with every little detail of your life. Every decision, every moment, every concern is in His hands. And when you surrender those to Him, you experience a sense of freedom and relief. The reality is, you're not meant to carry everything. God never intended for you to handle it all on your own. You were created to rely on Him, to trust in His guidance, and to rest in His love. So the next time you find yourself overthinking, take a step back and remind yourself that God has got it. He's handling the situation and He's working on your behalf. Trust in His process. Let go of the need to control and experience the peace that comes from knowing that He's already taking care of it all. He's got this and He's got you. There is a profound truth in understanding that God has already got the situation under control. Too often, we become consumed with worry, stress, and anxiety, trying to predict the future or determine every possible outcome of a situation. We work ourselves into a frenzy, believing that if we don't intervene, things will fall apart. We clutch tightly to the reins of our lives, thinking that the more control we have, the better the outcome will be. But what we fail to realize is that this constant grip we have on our lives is only causing more chaos. It's a burden we were never meant to bear. God in His wisdom does not require our constant management of every detail. He doesn't need us to manipulate circumstances or figure out every step of the journey. God already has the plan in place, and He is working in ways that we cannot see. He is already moving behind the scenes, orchestrating the things that need to happen in the perfect timing. We, as human beings, often forget this because we are limited in our understanding, but God is not bound by time, space, or limitations. He is always in control, and He knows exactly what is needed for the good of those who trust in Him. When we let go of our need to control everything, we begin to step into a place of peace, understanding, and trust. The struggle comes from our desire to hold on to something that was never ours to begin with. We worry about the unknowns and we try to predict every possible scenario, thinking that if we anticipate everything, we can prepare for it. But life doesn't work like that. No matter how much we plan, there will always be things beyond our control. There will always be circumstances that catch us off guard. The key then is not in knowing or controlling everything, but in trusting that God has already worked it out. Trusting that God has it handled is one of the most liberating truths you can embrace. When you understand that He is in control, you no longer have to carry the weight of every decision, every moment, or every problem. You can stop overthinking the next steps, stop worrying about every detail, and stop trying to figure out what's going to happen next. The moment you let go and stop overthinking, you allow space for peace to enter your heart. The peace that surpasses all understanding is available when you choose to release your grip and trust that God has already made a way. It's not that we become passive or lazy. It's not that we do nothing. On the contrary, trusting in God's control allows us to act with confidence, knowing that He is guiding us. When you stop overthinking, you can step forward with a sense of purpose and direction, knowing that even if you make a mistake, God is still in control. You can make decisions without the fear of failure holding you back. The anxiety and hesitation that often accompany decision-making dissolve when you know that God has already gone before you. You are no longer worried about whether or not you're making the right choice because you trust that whatever happens, God will work it for good. And even more, this trust frees you from the pressure to be perfect. We live in a world that constantly demands perfection, and it can be overwhelming. We feel that if we make one wrong move, everything will fall apart. We think that if we don't manage everything to the smallest detail, we'll fail. But the reality is we are not perfect, and we were never meant to be. Perfection is not the goal. What matters is trust. Trust in God's plan, His timing, and His ability to take care of the details. When you stop overthinking and trying to be perfect, you free yourself from that relentless pressure and you start to experience life with more grace. It's easy to get caught up in the thought that you must control every outcome in order to ensure success. But in doing so, you're essentially saying to yourself that God's plan is not enough, that His wisdom is insufficient. When you let go of the desire to control, you are trusting that God is far more capable of handling things than you could ever be. You are acknowledging that His plan is always better, even when you can't see it in the moment. Sometimes God's plan involves waiting, stepping back, or even going through struggles that we don't understand. But that doesn't mean His plan is wrong. It just means that it's working in ways that are beyond our understanding. The more you let go of the need to control everything, the more you'll notice how much easier it is to live with peace. When you stop overthinking, you stop creating unnecessary stress in your life. You stop imagining worst-case scenarios and allowing fear to cloud your judgment. Instead, you begin to see the world with a different perspective, one that is rooted in trust. You learn to walk through life with the confidence that God is always with you, guiding you and providing for you, even in the most uncertain moments. The idea that God has already handled it requires faith. Faith that even when you don't have the answers, He does. Faith that even when you feel lost, he knows exactly where you are and where you're headed. It requires faith that you don't have to figure everything out yourself, because God is already working on your behalf. This faith is not a blind hope. It's an assurance based on who God is. It's trusting in his character, his goodness, and his promises. When you trust in who God is, you understand that he will never fail you. He will never leave you or forsake you. His plans are always for your good, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. So let go. Let go of the worry, the anxiety, and the constant need to control. Let go of the need to know every detail of the future. Trust that God has already handled it. Trust that he is in control. Trust that he is working things out in his perfect timing. And as you do, you will experience a peace that you've never known before. You will find that the burdens you've been carrying are no longer yours to bear, because God is already carrying them for you. He has already made a way. You don't have to keep overthinking, overanalyzing, or overburdening yourself with what's to come. Rest in the fact that God is already taking care of it all. The struggle to surrender control is real, and it's something many of us face on a daily basis. We've been conditioned to believe that if we don't act, if we don't step in, if we don't try to force an outcome, everything will unravel. We think we are the only ones who can make it all happen. It's a mindset that places an enormous burden on our shoulders, making us believe that every outcome, every situation, and every problem depends solely on our actions. But the reality is, we were never meant to carry that weight. The desire to control is rooted in fear. A fear that if we let go, everything will fall apart. It's a fear that tells us that if we don't plan for every possibility, we're bound to fail. But what if I told you that the true key to peace, success, and fulfillment in life comes not from holding on tighter, but from letting go? Think about it. When you surrender your need to control, when you stop overthinking every detail, you open yourself to a life filled with possibilities. You begin to trust that God has already prepared the way, that he is already handling what you cannot see. You're no longer burdened by the stress of figuring it all out. You stop allowing the fear of the unknown to paralyze you, and you start walking with confidence, knowing that the one who holds the universe is also holding your life in his hands. It's easy to become consumed by the pressure to control everything. We look at our lives, our families, our careers, and our relationships, and we believe that if we don't have our hands in every situation, things will fall apart. But in reality, we can't control everything. No matter how hard we try, there will always be things that are beyond our reach, things that we can't predict or manage. And when we hold on too tightly to situations and outcomes, we only create more anxiety and frustration for ourselves. But there is freedom in letting go. Letting go doesn't mean giving up or being passive. It doesn't mean that you don't care or that you stop working toward your goals. It simply means that you release the need to control every single outcome. It means you trust that God is already at work and that he is leading you in the right direction. You step out of the driver's seat and allow God to take the wheel. It's a shift from relying on your own strength to relying on the strength and wisdom of the one who knows the beginning from the end. When you stop overthinking and trying to control every aspect of your life, you also free yourself from the weight of perfection. We live in a society that glorifies perfection, that makes us believe we have to get everything right the first time. But the truth is, perfection is an illusion. It doesn't exist. Life is messy, unpredictable, and filled with mistakes and failures. But that's where God's grace comes in, when we stop trying to control everything and let go of our pursuit of perfection. We open ourselves to his grace. We allow him to step in and work through our imperfections. We stop holding ourselves to impossible standards and begin to embrace the truth that we are enough just as we are. Flaws, mistakes, and all. Letting go of the need to control doesn't mean that we stop taking responsibility. It means that we acknowledge that we are not in control of the outcomes, and we trust that God will handle the things that are beyond our ability. It's a shift from a mindset of, I have to make this happen, to, I trust that God will make a way, even when I don't see one. This trust is rooted in faith. A faith that believes that God's timing is perfect even when it doesn't align with our own. A faith that knows He has already gone ahead of us, working out the details that we can't even begin to understand. When you surrender control and stop overthinking, you allow God's peace to fill the void where anxiety used to reside. Peace doesn't come from having all the answers or knowing exactly what's going to happen next. Peace comes from knowing that God is in control, that He has already handled what you cannot see. It comes from the assurance that no matter what you face, you are not alone. God is with you, guiding you, providing for you, and working everything out for your good. This kind of peace is powerful. It's a peace that transcends circumstances. It doesn't depend on whether things are going well or not. It's a peace that remains constant, even in the midst of uncertainty. It's the peace that comes from knowing that, even when things don't make sense, God is still in control. He's still working, He's still moving, and He is still guiding you toward His perfect plan for your life. Letting go of control also opens you up to greater possibilities. When we hold on to our own plans too tightly, we close ourselves off from the plans that God has for us. His ways are higher than ours, and His plans are far greater than anything we could ever imagine. But when we release the need to control, we make room for His plan to unfold. We allow Him to lead us in directions we may not have considered before. We begin to walk by faith, trusting that the path He is guiding us on is the best one for us, even when it doesn't look the way we expected. The fear of letting go often stems from a lack of trust. We fear that if we don't take control, things won't turn out the way we want them to. We fear that if we don't figure everything out, we'll miss out on something important. But what we fail to realize is that God's plan is always better than ours. His vision for our lives is far greater than anything we could dream up on our own. When we trust Him, we open ourselves to the possibility of something far beyond our wildest expectations. The more we surrender, the more we experience God's peace, grace, and provision. The more we let go, the more we see Him work in ways that we could never have orchestrated ourselves. And as we walk in that peace, we also begin to experience greater joy. Joy doesn't come from having everything under control. It doesn't come from knowing every detail of the future. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens, God is in control. He is handling it, and He will never fail. The decision to stop overthinking and let go of control is not a one-time event. It's a daily choice. It's a continual act of surrendering our plans, our fears, and our desires to God, trusting that He will work them out for our good. And with each choice to let go, we find ourselves growing in faith, trust, and peace. We stop living in fear of the unknown, and we start living with the confidence that God is with us, guiding us, and already handling what we cannot. So let go. Let go of the worry, the stress, and the constant need to control. Trust that God has already worked it out. Trust that He is already handling it. And as you do, you will experience a life of peace, joy, and fulfillment that comes from knowing that God is in control and that He is more than capable of handling everything in your life. There's a profound truth that when we stop overthinking and trying to control every detail of our lives, we open ourselves up to greater possibility. The moment we let go of the need to be in control, we invite peace into our hearts. We begin to understand that we don't have to force things to happen or to make every decision perfectly. There is a certain level of peace that comes with surrendering to the idea that God is handling it, that He is already in motion, working out the details of your life in ways that you can't even see yet. This peace doesn't come from knowing what the future holds, but from knowing that the one who holds the future is in control. One of the biggest challenges many of us face is the constant desire to understand and control everything around us. We believe that if we don't take action, if we don't fix every problem, or if we don't have a plan for every situation, everything will collapse. It's easy to get wrapped up in the fear that if we don't have every aspect of our lives figured out, we are somehow failing. But this belief stems from a lack of trust, not just in ourselves, but in the divine plan that God has for our lives. When we overthink and try to control every situation, we are essentially saying that we don't trust God to take care of things. We believe that we know better than He does. And in doing so, we become overwhelmed, stressed, and often exhausted. The truth is, God is not only in control of the big things, He is also handling the little things. The things that we often overlook, the things that we think are too small or insignificant to matter, are in His hands. We might think that we need to fix everything and control every little detail, but in reality, we are only complicating the process. The more we try to take control, the more we miss out on the peace that comes from trusting that God is already working on our behalf. He is orchestrating things in ways that we cannot even begin to imagine. And that's where the beauty of faith lies. When we stop overthinking, we also start to trust God's timing. How often do we find ourselves frustrated because things aren't happening as quickly as we want them to? We try to speed things up because we think that if we don't act now, the opportunity will pass us by. But God's timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't align with our time. He sees the bigger picture and He knows what is best for us. When we let go of the need to rush and force things to happen, we give room for God to work in His time. We can't speed up the seasons of our lives, but we can trust that each season has its purpose and that God will bring about what He has promised at just the right moment. Letting go of the need to control every situation is a declaration of trust. It's an acknowledgement that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay. It's an invitation for God to take the lead. When we try to control things, we often hold ourselves to unrealistic standards, thinking that we have to be perfect, that we have to get everything right. But God is not asking for perfection. He is asking for trust. He is asking us to lean into Him, to trust that He will guide us and provide for us. When we stop overthinking and allow Him to take control, we stop measuring our worth by our ability to manage everything perfectly. We begin to see ourselves through God's eyes as His beloved children, not as individuals who need to have everything together at all times. This process of letting go can be difficult, especially when we've spent so much of our lives believing that we are the ones who need to fix things. The fear of failure, the fear of not being good enough, and the fear of things not turning out as we want them to can be paralyzing. But what if we stopped allowing fear to dictate our lives? What if we stopped listening to the voice that tells us we have to do everything ourselves? What if we begin to listen to the still, small voice of God that says, I am handling it, and you don't have to carry that burden. When we surrender control, we make room for faith to flourish. We make room for God's peace, knowing that He will take care of everything, even when we don't understand the process. Overthinking often stems from the desire to avoid mistakes. We are so afraid of getting it wrong, of making the wrong choice, that we end up paralyzed, unable to move forward. But here's the truth. Failure is not the end. It's not something to fear, but something to learn from. God doesn't expect us to be perfect, and He doesn't expect us to never fail. In fact, failure can be one of the greatest tools for growth. When we stop overthinking, we release the fear of failure and open ourselves up to the lessons that can only come from taking risk and stepping out in faith. Trusting God doesn't mean we won't encounter obstacles. It means that no matter what happens, we trust that He is with us, guiding us through it all. Letting go of the need to control doesn't mean we stop being active participants in our lives. It doesn't mean we stop making decisions or striving toward our goals. It means we stop putting unnecessary pressure on ourselves to control every outcome. We stop holding on to the belief that if we don't do it all, it won't get done. Instead, we trust that God is guiding our steps, and when we walk in alignment with His will, He will lead us to where we need to be. We become open to His direction, ready to step forward in faith, knowing that He is already making a way for us. There's also a profound truth in understanding that when we let go of control, we begin to experience greater joy. We often think that joy comes from achieving our goals or having everything go according to plan. But true joy comes from knowing that God is in control, that we are not alone in the process, and that His plan for our lives is better than anything we could have imagined. When we let go of the pressure to be perfect and to manage everything ourselves, we free ourselves to experience the joy that comes from walking by faith and trusting that God is handling it. As you continue to surrender control and stop overthinking, you will notice a shift in your heart. Your mind will be less cluttered with worry, and you will experience a sense of freedom that comes from releasing the need to manage every outcome. You will begin to live with greater peace, trusting that God is in control and that His plans for you are good. No matter what you face, no matter how uncertain the future may seem, you can rest in the assurance that God is already handling it. And when you trust in His plan, you can step into each day with confidence, knowing that He will guide you, protect you, and provide for you in ways that you could never have done on your own. So stop overthinking. Stop trying to control every situation. Let go of the fear, the worry, and the stress. Trust that God is already handling it. As you do, you will experience the peace, joy, and freedom that come from knowing that He is in control. He's got this, and He's got you. When we stop overthinking and trying to control every aspect of our lives, we unlock a whole new level of freedom. The weight of worry, the burden of constantly thinking through every possible outcome, every decision, every move, it all begins to lift. We carry these unnecessary loads as if our thoughts alone will shape the future. We believe that if we don't analyze every single detail, if we don't have a contingency plan for every scenario, we're setting ourselves up for failure. But what we fail to recognize is that this constant need to control isn't just exhausting, it's unnecessary, because God in His infinite wisdom is already handling things behind the scenes, even when we can't see it. How many times have you laid awake at night, consumed with anxiety over a situation that was completely out of your hands? How often do you try to figure out every detail, attempt to predict every possible outcome, thinking that if you just plan a little better, everything will work out in your favor? The truth is, we've been conditioned to believe that our success, our peace, and our happiness are contingent upon our ability to control every aspect of our lives. We believe that if we're not constantly planning, managing, or anticipating, we're somehow failing. But what if the opposite is true? What if peace doesn't come from managing everything, but from trusting that God is already working things out for us? When we stop overthinking and let go of the need to control, we begin to open ourselves to a greater sense of trust and faith in God's timing. We don't have to force anything to happen. We don't have to keep pushing, planning, and worrying. We just have to trust that God is already making a way, even when we can't see it. The path is already being laid out for us, and every step we take is part of His plan. When we try to control everything, we often fight against what God is doing. Our attempts to control things lead to frustration, confusion, and a lack of peace. But when we let go, we invite peace into our lives. We allow ourselves to move forward with faith, knowing that God is handling the rest. The biggest challenge in releasing control is the fear that we might lose something important. We fear that if we don't hold tight to every aspect of our lives, something might slip through the cracks. We fear that if we stop overthinking, we'll miss an opportunity to make a mistake or fail in some way. But this fear is rooted in the idea that everything depends on us, that we are the ones who need to make it all happen. However, this isn't the truth. The reality is, we are not the ultimate architects of our lives. God is, and He has already orchestrated everything with divine precision. When we stop overthinking, we align ourselves with His will. We stop trying to micromanage every situation and start trusting that He is guiding us, providing for us, and working things out in ways we can't even comprehend. Imagine for a moment the freedom that comes from knowing you don't have to figure everything out. The weight of the world is not on your shoulder. You don't have to have all the answers, make the right decision every single time, or control every outcome. When you stop overthinking, you start to live in the present moment, fully embracing the peace that comes from trusting God with the future. The decisions you make become less about worrying over the outcome and more about listening to God's guidance, making the best choices you can, and leaving the rest in His hands. You begin to live with an assurance that no matter what happens, God has got you. He is already handling what you can't see, already putting things in place for you in ways you could never have imagined. We often think that by controlling every little thing, we can avoid failure, disappointment, or setbacks. But the truth is, failure isn't the enemy. Failure is a tool, one that God uses to teach us, shape us, and refine us. When we let go of the need to control every outcome, we open ourselves up to the growth that comes from experiencing setbacks and challenges. If we never allow ourselves to fail, we never allow ourselves to learn and grow in the ways that God wants us to. Every mistake, every detour, every setback is part of His plan to shape us into the person He has called us to be. Releasing control means giving God room to work in our lives in a way that only He can. It means trusting that His wisdom far surpasses our own. When we try to force things, we close ourselves off from the possibilities that God is working behind the scenes. We limit ourselves by our own understanding and our own desires. But when we let go, we allow God's infinite wisdom to take over. We trust that His plan is greater than anything we could ever conceive on our own. And in that trust, we find the peace that we've been desperately searching for. Think about how often you've tried to force things to happen in your life. Maybe it's a job opportunity, a relationship, a goal, or a dream that you've been striving for. The more you push, the more frustrated and exhausted you become. It's because you're trying to control something that was never meant to be controlled by you. God knows what's best for you, and He knows the perfect timing. You may not see it now, but He is already working on your behalf. When you let go, you free yourself from the need to have it all figured out. You let go of the stress of trying to make it all happen and allow God to take the lead. Letting go of control is also about accepting that you don't have to be perfect. We live in a world that demands perfection, that tells us we have to get everything right. We are constantly bombarded with messages that if we don't do things perfectly, we will fail. But the truth is, perfection is a myth. We are all human. We are all imperfect, and that's okay. God isn't asking us to be perfect. He's asking us to trust Him. When we stop trying to be perfect, we stop the cycle of overthinking, of doubting our decisions, of second-guessing ourselves. We start to embrace the reality that mistakes are part of the journey and that God's grace is sufficient for us even when we fall short. When we stop overthinking and release control, we create space for God's peace to fill our hearts. Peace isn't found in having everything in order, in having every decision figured out, or in knowing every step of the journey. Peace is found in trusting that God is already handling it. Peace comes from knowing that you don't have to control everything, because the one who controls it all is already in motion, working on your behalf, guiding you in ways that you can't even see. As you let go of the need to overthink, you will begin to experience the joy of living in the moment. You'll stop worrying about what might happen and start enjoying what is happening right now. You'll stop fearing the future and start trusting that God is already preparing the way. You'll stop striving to control the outcomes and start trusting that God's outcomes will always be better than anything you could have planned on your own. And in that trust, you will find a peace that surpasses all understanding. So stop overthinking. Stop trying to control every situation. Trust that God is already handling it. Stop letting fear and doubt dictate your decisions. Let go of the need for perfection. Let go of the pressure to have everything figured out. Trust that God is with you, guiding you and handling what you cannot. As you do, you will experience the peace, joy, and freedom that comes from knowing that He is in control, that He has already worked it out for your good, and that He will never fail you. As you learn to stop overthinking, you start to embrace the beauty of the present moment. Overthinking is a prison for the mind, a constant cycle of worry, doubt, and fear about things that have not even happened yet. It's a trap that keeps us tethered to a future that is uncertain and a past that we cannot change. When we let go of overthinking, we begin to experience the freedom that comes from being fully present. This freedom is not based on our circumstances or on having everything in perfect order. It's based on the knowledge that we are living in alignment with God's will, that we are trusting Him to take care of what we cannot see, and that we are walking by faith in the here and now. Too often we allow ourselves to be consumed by thoughts of what if? What if this doesn't work out? What if I make the wrong decision? What if things don't go as planned? We ask these questions over and over, each time spiraling deeper into uncertainty and fear. But in the process, we forget the simple truth. We are not meant to figure everything out on our own. God has already gone before us, already laid the path for us to follow. The answers that we are searching for are not found in our own understanding, but in the trust that God is working everything out for our good, even when we can't see how it will unfold. When we release the pressure to figure everything out, we start to breathe more freely. We realize that we don't need to have all the answers today because God is already handling what's to come. This doesn't mean we stop planning or making decisions. It doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing. It means we stop obsessing over every detail. We trust that the decisions we make when guided by faith are already in alignment with God's purpose for our lives. When we stop overthinking, we stop second-guessing every move we make. We stop looking for external validation or confirmation that we're on the right path. Instead, we trust that God is the ultimate guide, and that His presence in our lives is all the validation we need. We start to move forward with confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, He is in control. The peace that comes from this trust is unlike anything we can manufacture on our own. It's a deep, abiding peace that sustains us even in the midst of chaos, because we know that God is not only in control, but that He is good and He is faithful. When we let go of overthinking, we also stop living in fear of failure. Fear of failure is one of the greatest reasons why we overthink. We think that if we don't analyze every possible outcome, we will make a mistake that will ruin everything. But failure is not the enemy. Mistakes are not the end of the road. In fact, failure can often be one of the greatest opportunities for growth. When we release the need to avoid failure at all costs, we begin to see it as a stepping stone on the path to success. We learn to embrace failure as a necessary part of the journey, not as a final verdict. And when we stop overthinking, we stop letting fear control our decisions. We stop letting fear